Missing someone with all your missing someone
What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. So this week's episode, I'm going to do a gray blending technique on this client. I have shown something very similar in my other gray blending videos, but here is another one showing you on hair that has some previous highlights that are not quite the level that it needs to be, and then working with this client's specific gray pattern. So she has a little bit of gray right around her hairline there that kind of frames her face already. I thought it was really pretty. So we're gonna try and just kind of like enhance it, and I'm gonna show you how I would tackle this type of correction. So she has really grown out old highlights and some old color in between her highlights. So our goal today is to pretty much just get her as light as possible and have something that will grow out really nicely on her, and then depending on how much she loves it, will determine how often she's going to come back in to touch it up or maintain what she has going on. So this client has a really short bob. At the end of the color, I am going to trim up her hair. It was just a teeny bit uneven, and so because her hairs are just so short back here, I'm trying to clip them up, and I'm just kind of slicing the back here just to break it up a little bit. I don't want to leave this part untouched because when it grows out it might look a little weird if I don't touch this part. So I'm just adding a few slices of color back here just to kind of break it up, because majority of her gray is on the top and around her hairline. So back here it's pretty dark, and I just wanted something that would like blend and make everything look a little bit more cohesive, even though these hairs are a lot shorter. And since her hair is so short, the hairs that are on top pretty much cover this area and just lay on top of it. But I do like to just add a little bit of highlights back here just to add some more dimension and give her more of a natural feel to tie everything together. So for my lightener, I'm using the Schwarzkopf Blonde Me lightener, and I just did a really small bowl of 6 and 20, I believe. So I mixed that with 6 and 20 volume, and I usually mix it 1 to 2 with the developer, and I believe I did about like 40 to 60 grams of the developer, and then switch on over to just using 20 volume for the rest of the head. She expressed to me during the consultation that she wanted something that would just really look really natural on her, and something that was soft and would enhance her gray. So I'm not going for something that's too light or too solid. So since we're wanting to pretty much like blend and have something that looks super seamless, the whole technique for the whole head, I pretty much just sliced her hair. I didn't do any weaves because sometimes weaves can be a little too blended, and since we're using or leaving a lot of negative space in between each of the sections, I'd rather do a slice to just get a lot of impact between the foils. So I'm doing the back, and I had done the nape area with just one foil, but as I get closer towards the top, I'm starting to split it into two, all the way just up until the top of her ears, because after that section I will just be taking a center section up the head and then connecting the front and back above the ears later. Now I chose to do it this way opposed to how I normally would do it like on longer hair. On longer hair I normally would do a whole like detail hairline foil, but her hair is so short that even if she puts her hair up in a ponytail, those little hairs won't even reach the ponytail. So I just went ahead and just did it horizontal little sections up the head instead of taking like a hairline detailed piece around the hairline. And by doing it that way, it just made it super easy for me to kind of put it in the foil because these hairs are just super short. I feel like foiling short hair is a lot harder than foiling long hair because you have to like grab the hair and like sometimes the foil slips. You have to find a way to really lock your foils in. Sometimes I will fold up my foils like 3 to 4 times more than I normally would. So the foils don't slip back there because they're so short. So now that I've reached pretty much the top of her ears, now I'm going in and taking that center section like I normally would on hair that's longer, and I'm taking my sections, I would say about a little less than ½ an inch, and just leaving a lot of negative space because we want it to be very dimensional. We don't want something that's too blonde or has too much of a highlight because her gray pattern, she does have more dark than light. So we're looking to just really enhance what she currently has so that everything kind of grows out and fades out really seamless and pretty on her. And for my sections too, my slices are pretty see-through. This is going to ensure that you get a really good lift out of it and everything is pretty even. So as I get closer towards the top of the head, this is where I start to meet her old highlights, because on the underneath all the old highlights have been pretty much cut off because her hair is so short. So as I meet her old highlights, I'm trying to be super careful to not overlap on her previous lightened hair. So like let's say if I see any hairs that are close to a level 6 and below, I will kind of lightly apply a little bit of lightener there, but try to avoid anything that's pretty much like a level 7 and up. So I'll just kind of pick out those blonde pieces like that and just leave them out and just really highlight and lighten the pieces that are a bit darker so that her hair stays nice and healthy. So I am continuing the sectioning pattern all the way up to the hairline of her face, and slowly as I get closer towards that hairline area, I am making my sections just slightly closer together than I would anything below the occipital, just so that this has a bit more color wherever she parts her hair. So now that I've done pretty much most of the foils up until that last part that you see getting to her money piece, I do turn them around and I'll do this in the front. So for her money piece, since you guys saw in the before video that she naturally has really pretty gray that already frames her face, so I want to enhance that a little bit more. So I'm going in and I'm just going to do a few really fine slices around her hairline here, and when I do this part I do get the baby hairs as well too. I know some people don't like doing that, but just depending on the client, for her I felt like it would be pretty just because we are doing something that is going to blend in with her natural as it grows in. So I didn't mind highlighting those baby hairs there because I didn't want to leave them too dark, especially around the face. So here I'm just going to be doing like about 3 slices back to back, and then I will continue doing my normal slicing pattern with some dimension in between. But as I connect that front money piece with the rest of the back there, I am leaving even less negative space than I did in the back. So right after I do the money piece, I take like a really thin slice of negative space before I do the next foil, and then I will continue my normal spacing pattern that I did in the back. And by doing it this way, I feel like it just gives a really soft transition to adding back dimension in from and tying the back to the front. Since the front is about 3 slices, it's pretty like a chunky money piece that I did. So just by doing like a thin slice of negative space to tie and blend the front and back together, I feel like it does a really good job in slowly adding the dimension and creating that really pretty gradient to where it looks like the color is getting lighter as it gets closer towards the front of the face. And then for the sides, I already did about 2 slices around the hairline to give and tie in that money piece. So now you can see how I'm connecting that front and the back. So that is why I left the bottom part just foiled that bottom part all the way up to the top of the ear, because I was connecting the front and the back by doing it this way. And I've said this in my other videos, but I feel like doing it this way and primarily tackling that back in just one section and then tying the front and back together in this other quadrant saves me a lot of time. I used to split the back into 2 and do the 2 sections all the way up, and I find that doing it this way just saves me a lot more time, and you're really getting the same amount of impact by doing it this way as well. Okay, so now I'm going in and tipping out the hair that I didn't really foil. So everything that's outside the foils, and you can see is her previous highlight. So what I do before going in and balayaging in like this is I will go in between each foil and split the hair in half. So the hair that is outside the foil right now that I'm tipping out, I purposely put it on that side, and I'm going through the ends and picking out where it's mostly blonde and really saturating there, making sure that I'm brushing back side to side to get the underneath. And here you can see that's the other half that I split in between, and I'm doing this in sections too because I want to make sure that I get a really good even saturation. But again, I am picking out the previous blonde and lightening those pieces only. If I were to just take it and apply lightener all over, then I would have like warmth in between where her natural is or where the darker highlights are. So I'm purposely only picking out what is already blonde because this is going to help me create a really seamless blend. And another advantage to doing this on short hair is that you really need to just focus on the top mohawk section, especially if your client parts like in the middle like she does. So I'm for sure doing all of the hair that's in the mohawk section and then just doing some tip outs just like around the face. This is because since her hair is so short, anything underneath or on the sides beside the mohawk section, you're really not going to see too much because everything that's in the mohawk section is pretty much overlaying on top of those hairs at this length. But if she was a client that had like hair that was below the shoulder, had like medium length or even long hair, then I would for sure tip out everything even below or on the sides of the mohawk. So I would only do mostly and focus on the mohawk if the hair is this short and like above the shoulders. And then for my tip out, I'm using Blonde Me Schwarzkopf Lightener and I'm using 10 volume. So this is what my client's hair looked like once her foils are ready. She lifted really pretty because her roots were pretty much all virgin. She had been growing them for a few months. So you can see how beautiful her hair lifted. This is what it should look like for the toner to really tone a very nice silver gray. Now, due to the previous highlights on her ends, I already explained to my client that some of the ends weren't going to be completely perfect because her old highlights were just so dimensional. It's really impossible for me to kind of pick all of the warmth out of the ends. So I told her that it would be a process for us to kind of get that all even. So because of that, we are going to tone her a little bit darker than a lighter silver. And before the toner, I always like to pre-tone with the Pulp Riot Barcelona purple shampoo. This one is my favorite purple shampoo because it's so powerful, but it is not that drying compared to other purple shampoos that I've used. So when I do this, I towel dry the hair really well after I've shampooed all the lightener out, and I will apply a generous amount of this purple shampoo and we'll leave it in for like 5 to 10 minutes. This is going to help as like a pre-tone to my silver formulations. And I feel like by adding this extra step, it really does help with the toning process because it shows me where I need to really focus the toner more in, and it really does help tone out the pieces that are level 10, so I know that I can tone those pieces last and really focus on the areas that are a little bit more brassy. So here is what her raw lift looks like. We haven't put the toner on yet. So for her toner formulation, her root shade is going to be the Liquid Demi by Pulp Bright, and I'm using 6-1. That's my go-to for a shadow root on any gray. And then for the gray formulation, I'm using the Pulp Bright Rapid Toners, and my go-to for that is the Violet, Moonstone, and Silver combination. And the formulation and ratio for my rapid toner formulation really varies on a few things of the hair. Like I will feel out the hair and see how porous it is or how yellow it is, and sometimes the ratio does change depending on what I'm working with. So for this specific client, I did more of a lighter formulation on this combo, and I like to add in more of the Violet and Moonstone than the Silver. So in the formula, there's essentially a little bit more Violet than there is Silver to kind of cancel out the yellow. And I choose to add more of a violet because I'd rather have any of my grays be a bit more violet than a blue violet. Than a blue gray, because it'll fade a bit better. Like whenever I do more of a blue gray tone or a blue silver tone on hair that is this dark and kind of fades out very brassy, I feel like it does fade more green sometimes. So I always like to overcompensate on the violet side just so that it helps it and avoids the green fade out, and it more so fades silvery and blonde. So right now I'm just quickly doing a slight shadow root. I'm not doing a shadow root on her hairline money piece yet. I'm just doing everything on the back, and I started on the top because that's where I want the deepest part to be. And I'm just quickly just doing a really baby root tap to kind of blend those line of demarcation of the highlights. And then after that, I'm going to quickly go in and just apply the silver toner just all over. And I start in the back here, and I'm just going in and trying to apply this really fast because these toners work extremely fast because it is a rapid toner and it's meant to be on the hair for a maximum, I think, of like 20 minutes. So in the first like few minutes, you can already see it working and toning. And this toner too, I like to mix it with just 6 volume because I find that sometimes it can bump the base. So if the client's hair is more on the finer side, it has a higher chance of bumping the base. So to avoid that, I do like to pre-mix the color before applying it and let it air out for as long as possible to avoid the bumping of the base. I normally will find that it happens on hair that is a bit thinner. It doesn't happen too much on hair that is a bit coarser, but nonetheless, I always do it for every client just in case, because when you're doing very ashy tones like this and it accidentally bumps the base, when it does that and the color fades out, the virgin hair that it bumped sometimes can fade a little bit warm, and some clients don't like that look. So I try to air it out as much as possible to avoid the color from bumping the base. Alrighty guys, so here is the finished look. So we went for more of a darker gray because, like I said, some of her previous highlights on the ends were still more yellow than I would have liked it to be, but honestly that is all we could do today considering how much dimension she had, and she absolutely loved it. We left it on for a little bit longer than I normally would so that it would fully cancel out all of that warmth on the ends. So when this fades out, her ends might fade a bit warmer than the root because they are a little bit darker, just because of her old highlights. But she's gonna go home and maintain this color using the Pulp Bright Barcelona Purple shampoo, and honestly I feel like she will enjoy the fade. It's going to fade into a really beautiful ash blonde, and here you can see how well it blends in with her roots. Everything looks super natural, and I feel like it's going to fade perfect on her. Alrighty guys, that is it for this week's episode. I hope you guys learned something new, and as always, thank you guys so much for watching and tuning in, and I will talk to you guys next week.